what courses should I focus on in high school if I want to become a lawyer?
So I can touch base on that, and I think this also goes hand in hand with like how long does it take to be a lawyer, and the educational pathway, where me personally, I didn't know that I wanted to be a lawyer when I was in undergrad or even high school. So my course selection wasn't tailored specifically to being a lawyer. I think after I finished my undergrad, I knew I wanted to continue school. And it was, for me, it was, hey, I either go and I go to business school and do a master's, or law school. And, you know, I balanced the different pros and cons, and I chose law school.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't, and like I was saying, I didn't take any law classes in my undergrad, or so law school was new to me in terms of the curriculum and content. But if you knew at an early stage that, hey, I want to become a lawyer, then definitely, you know, taking some legal advocacy courses, even some type of oral advocacy courses would even help you. If you wanted to be a corporate lawyer, then maybe even some business classes and some finance classes. If you wanted to be a criminal lawyer, obviously taking criminal law or evidence and stuff like that would help you. But I don't think it would be, I don't think that you could still pursue law like I did without having those basic courses done.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
That's actually great. I know some students do find that they need to take law course in high school necessarily. They can, but I think it's great how you said it. Really, you can take a little bit of everything just to kind of get you a whole different perspectives and different ideas, and that will kind of get you give you an idea as to what you're interested in, right? And later on, if you wanted to jump into law, you can.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, in your opinion, do you think that the law field is for everyone, or should you only go into law if you're interested in becoming a lawyer?
I'll go for that. So I think, Tusha, this actually builds great on your question, and your answer that you just gave. So you don't need to, obviously you don't need to know, or you don't need to have the courses to kind of back up that you want to be a lawyer. In my opinion, do I think the law field is for everyone? Absolutely not. Some people just, they don't like it, they can't handle it, or it's just not what they want to do, and that's okay. Personally, I don't think I would have farewelled in Tusha has a business background. I don't think I would have been able to survive business school. So there's so many different things. Personally, my background was psychology, so I was trying to do a Bachelor of Arts at first, and then I wanted to switch it over to a Bachelor of Science. And a lot of my courses were tailored to science, and a lot of my courses in high school as well were tailored to science. If you want to become a lawyer, you have to go through that path. But if you find yourself and you want to apply to law school just to try it out, there are so many things that you also could do with your law degree, and I know we'll touch base on that a little later. But definitely, if you're interested in it, you want to make sure that you're definitely dedicated to it, but at the same time, you could reap the rewards in so many different ways. And you see on TV, or you might even come across some people that say, you know, well, my law degree says this, my law degree says that, but they're not lawyers. So if you shouldn't only go into it, if you're interested in law, you don't have to be a lawyer. You can still kind of pursue that.
Yeah, and I think Anissa said it well. And the only thing I would add to that is I definitely recommend to have, if you're choosing the field of law, whether you're practicing law or not, you definitely need to have some interest in it. You know, there's going to be late nights, early mornings, long days. You gotta enjoy what you do. I don't think that you would excel in the profession of being a lawyer or an academic or whatever if you didn't have an interest in it, just because of how demanding it is. So I really genuinely feel that you definitely need an interest in it to be able to succeed.
Absolutely. That's a great point, Tushar. I think with every profession, you have to be invested and really want to be in that profession, right? To stay motivated, especially with such a lengthy process to becoming a lawyer, right? That you want to make sure that's really what you want to do. You're spending so much time, energy, money. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Next question. After you finish law school, are you guaranteed to get hired at a law firm?
So this is another good question. And I can definitely understand whoever the asker was. I can understand the reservations, and like any job that you go through, any degree that you do complete, there's no guarantee. Unfortunately, it's not that anyone you're going to come out and people are going to say, oh, I want to hire you. I want to hire you. We see the movies where there are some of the law school graduates and people are trying to poach them. That does happen, but very rarely, very, very rarely, especially in Canada. So you really have to put your work into it. And the way the law schools are set up is that they help you kind of create a network. They do some of these networking nights. They do things just like this, these career talks. They have different firms come in. So you definitely get your exposure. And whether that's doing your law school in Canada or in the UK. Personally, for me, my network at that time was a lot of UK law firms, and I had decided that I wasn't going to practice there. So for me coming back, I definitely didn't have a job. I knew some people, so I tried to go through the network and try to see if I could get an internship here or there, but it just didn't work out that way. And I think the brutal reality is that I probably applied to 100 jobs, because once you're out of law school, the main thing you have to consider is, well, what are you looking for? And you can't practice as a lawyer yet because you haven't been called to the bar. You can practice as an assistant or some type of assisting capacity. Or articling if you're at that stage, and articling is that 10-month internship that I was talking about. But it is hard to do. You have to go through so many interviews. It can be a little discouraging. But eventually you will find your path. And there's so many law firms out there that you could apply to. And just because, you don't have your heart set on a certain area of law, I would always say, don't discount that. Because for me personally, that was immigration law. I didn't know when I graduated from law school that I wanted to practice immigration law, and I came across a great opportunity. And that's when I actually had my eyes open to immigration law, and I thought, wow, this is actually pretty great. Never in my life would I think that I would have liked it. I would have practiced in it. And it would have been something that, even 5 years later, I'm still like, I still want to learn more and things like that. So, and I wanted to always do family law. And so now I'm actually in a position where I can do both of the areas that I want to do. But initially I started off only immigration law. So it's all about building yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about making the opportunities for yourself. If you're not going to put the work in to sending out your resumes, getting, letters of recommendation, really putting yourself out there, experiencing the rejection sometimes, then you'll never know. But there is no guarantee.
Thank you for your honesty, Anissa. I think that's important. Is there anything that you wanted to touch upon, Tushar?
Yeah, this is a quick point, and I think what Nisa said in terms of working on yourself, and I think it always comes down to employability. And just like any profession out there, you want to make yourself employable. And most positions and most firms are going to ask you for some experience. But hey, how can you get out of school and try to get a job, but you don't have any experience? So I think early in the stages when you're in law school, whether it's in the summer or on your own time, working as an assistant or a summer student and getting that training while you're in law school will make you a lot more employable by the time you're done law school. So just getting as much as you can on your resume so that when you're done, you are more employable. That's the one thing I would recommend. Get that experience as much as you can.
Absolutely. I think that's so important. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, so number 10 is, do you have any advice on how to survive and thrive in law school?
So when Anissa and I read this question yesterday, we kind of chuckled because there's so many things you should do, but her and I I mean, having 1,000 pages to read in a week, it's easier said than done. But if I had the chance to do a couple things, there's many things that would have helped me. You know, I've touched base on these points earlier, but you know, being dedicated, being disciplined, being organized are obviously gonna help you get through the academic part of law school. But you know, even other important factors such as, you know, your mental health, your diet, your physical health. I think if you put some time towards that, that is also going to benefit you huge in your law school process. You know, being physically fit, being mentally fit, making sure you're eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and not starving all day. Small things like that are going to help you get through law school. And obviously do your readings, do your homework, stay up to par on what's happening there, but take care of your body and yourself is very, very, very important.
I think it's important for like anything you go into, not just law school, like medical school, social work, all of them.
Yeah.
Okay, number 11. Can you apply to law school in Canada if you're an international student?
So this one required a little bit of research, but yes, you definitely can. You can go to law school in Canada if you are an international student. You would need to get your appropriate visas, your study permits, and everything sorted out. You need to show the funding, but you definitely can. You have to obviously get accepted, do your immigration, pay your fees basically, and basically get through it to the end. And a Canadian law school degree can be versatile in so many areas of the world and not just in Canada. Or that individual who is an international student in the Canadian law school could also take the degree and practice law in Canada and kind of build their path here as well. Yesterday when Tusha and I were talking about this, I was convinced that to be called to the bar, you actually have to be either a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident. But I think over the last so many years, they've actually changed that. So that's great news that a lot of people who don't have that status yet, you don't have the permanent residence, because it's not easy to get, let's be honest, or who aren't citizens, can also be called to the Ontario bar. And that's definitely something that I think it's great news for a lot of people. And that can also help build your path to permanent residence as well, if you haven't gone there already.
Awesome.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. Actually, that's fantastic news.
The only waiver I am going to put out, because Anissa and I experienced this ourselves being international students, is there is a different tuition requirement for international students. So you might be paying a premium if you are an international student studying in Canada, and vice versa if you're a Canadian traveling and studying abroad. But there's also many pros to that, so look out for that.
Thank you.
Awesome. Are international students and newcomers at an advantage when studying immigration law?
Good question. And when I read this, at first I had a response, and then I thought about it a little bit more, and I'm like, hey, there might be another side to this. And international students and newcomers, obviously they have to go through the immigration process. So they've done some research on their end, and they would probably have some good basic general knowledge of what their immigration process is. So, they're probably knowledgeable there. Also, international students and newcomers, if they did become immigration lawyers, they might be more, they might be able to relate to clients who are in the immigration process, because they were also sitting on the other side of that chair at one point. However, I do want to kind of put some caution there, where there is so much more to immigration, Canadian immigration, and it's changing on a daily and consistently basis, where you have to stay up to date, you have to continue to do your research. So although there are many benefits to international students and newcomers, there is continuous learning. So that will never stop.
Awesome. Number 13. What else can you do with a law degree?
Oh, lots. There's so much that you can do with a law degree, and I think that it's it's really important to highlight kind of that you don't always need to be a lawyer. And a lot of people who go through law school sometimes realize that, you know, I like it, but I don't think I want to practice law. I don't think that practicing law is for me. And that's okay. Some people actually just don't like working with people, frankly, and they don't want to do law. So that's one thing. But there are so many other careers that you could pursue, and a lot of people who have law degrees, a lot of them end up opening up their own businesses. They end up becoming the CEOs of their own companies. They go into politics. They can, you can work in kind of any kind of office job as well. A lot of people work in banks, in an advisory position, in a support position as well, kind of in an office structure. Some people do negotiations, some people go into sales. So there are, a law school degree can kind of take you almost in any path. I mean, it can't take you to become a doctor, but it can take you to any path that you want to go to, that just requires you having a certain level of education, whether it's an undergraduate or even a postgraduate sometimes. And a lot of these, even an analyst sometimes can have a law degree. And I think it's really interesting because I know people who they did law school. Actually, I'll tell you a story of this one gentleman that I know. He actually went to Harvard Law. He's Canadian. He went to Harvard Law School. And that has actually followed him. So every time everyone sees him, they think that, oh, Harvard lawyer. But a lot of people don't know that he's not actually practicing law. What he did was he went and became the CEO of his own company because he didn't like practicing law. And now he actually employs lawyers. So he's their employer, and he actually has a consulting business where corporations come to him, and he says, all right, I have the guy for you and for your legal trouble. So that's definitely, you can be so creative with a law degree. Even sometimes, and because of the day and age that we're in, even on Instagram, sometimes you see a lot of these popular people that you follow, and they have these killer businesses, whether it's an eyelash business or even a makeup business or something like that. A lot of these entrepreneurs actually have law degrees, but they never practice. So it's definitely a very versatile degree.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's actually some great information.
Really cool.
Yeah, I think Tushar actually, when we were talking about politics, he actually gave me a really good point. You want to share that?
Yeah, like I mean, fun fact is like what Anissa was saying, a lot of people who have a law degree, maybe later on in their careers, they get into politics, and you know, most Canadian prime ministers have held a law degree, aside from our current prime minister Justin Trudeau and Stephen Harper. Harper had an economics degree, and Justin Trudeau, as we all know, was a teacher. So they're kind of an exception to the rule. But most people who are high up in politics, they usually do have a law degree. And I've seen a lot of people who hold a law degree who may not be practicing the law. They get into, they become academics, you know, professors at universities and colleges, and teachers. So there isn't really any limit to what you can do with a law degree. Obviously, you know, people choose their career based on the return on investment, considering they spent a lot of money on their law degree. So that might dictate where you end up, but you're open to, you know, an endless possibility of options.
Yeah, that's a good point. Michelle and Barack Obama too were lawyers in the past, and you know, President of the United States.
Yeah.
And First Lady.
Not Trump though.
No. Oh.
Number 14 is, what are some other career options available for those who may not want to be lawyers but still want to work in the legal field?
Yeah, so again, like this kind of, we went over this, and so it's an endless possibility. One good thing I could tell you is so every year we have lawyer licensing fees, which means that we pay fees to the Law Society to be able to practice law in Ontario. And the way the fees are broken up is that, you know, the Law Society acknowledges the fact that, hey, everybody who's called to the bar is not going to be a practicing lawyer. So they break up the fees, whether if you're a practicing lawyer, then hey, you're going to pay the highest amount, versus, you know, if you're an academic and you're a professor, then you're going to pay a lot less. if you're not practicing the law at all, then hey, you might pay the lowest amount. So the fees are broken up and correspond to what to whether you're practicing the law or not. And so, again, yeah, there's an endless possibility. I've seen people who have law degrees who are back to what they were doing in their undergrad, whether it be science or HR or actually, I'm in touch with a high school teacher who I am potentially going to be doing a talk for his high school law class. And he went to University of Ottawa, got a law degree, but then went to teachers college, and he's a high school teacher. So it honestly depends on what your passion is and what your long-term goals are.
Absolutely.
Okay, so these are general justice system questions. How does someone get charged?
Okay, so interesting question. There are, I think the easy answer is that you have to do something to get charged. So you have to contravene one of the rules of our acts or anything like the legislation. But essentially the short answer is that an officer would charge you, and then you have the right to defend yourself thereafter, whether that's going through litigation, making a deal, any type of negotiation, alternative dispute resolution or anything like that. But basically you would have to do something to get charged. And there are so many different kinds of charges. There's a criminal charge, there's so many different levels. Well, there's a misdemeanor charge. So it's a very kind of broad question, but you have to do something contrary to basically the law to be able to get charged, and you have to get caught.
And I would definitely never recommend it.
Yeah.
Good advice. Number 16 is, what is the structure of the court?
Another good question. I'm going to try to answer this the best I can, because this could be literally a course on its own. But I would typically break up the court system in Canada in 4 tiers or 4 levels, and those 4 levels further broken down into the provincial courts and the federal system. So the provincial courts are broken down into 3 levels. The provincial or the lower courts, the superior courts, and the appeal courts. And the superior courts are the highest levels of courts in a province. They deal with most serious criminal and civil cases, and they have the power to review decisions of provincial courts. They adjudicate on various matters, and again, I don't want to get into each type of matter. And then comes the Supreme Court of Canada, which is the highest level of court. And if you continue through the appeal process, your matter would end up to the Supreme Court of Canada, and they have full decision-making power. And I'm going to keep it at that before we dig deeper.
Thank you.
Awesome. So this is a scenario question. Okay, I'm a trans youth in Brazil. I was living in Toronto for almost 3 years. Graduated from high school. I had entered on a visitor visa and got an extension. It expired in May 2018. I went back to Brazil in early 2020 to get top surgery, and I don't know how to get back into the country other than a student visa, which I can't afford. I want to get my PR. How can I do that?
Okay, so this question, it's what I call a loaded question. So I'll do my best to answer it in the time that we have. But what I do want to kind of preface my answer with is a question like this, and if there are any of the youth that do have scenario questions like this, I would always tell them, go and speak with an immigration lawyer. They can call Tushar and I for all we care, like we would love to spend that time to kind of go through, because it's not an easy answer. And there's a lot of information that we still do need to kind of direct you to the right path. Canadian immigration law actually is coveted by so many different countries because we have such an open and welcoming system, although at times it doesn't seem like that. And for this particular youth, being in Brazil doesn't seem like it's a great place for him or her to be, especially being a trans youth there. With everything going on with the economics, they clearly liked Canada a lot more. And the downside is that they want to come back, they can't afford to come back on a student visa. So not having funds is definitely something that will decrease your chances of coming to Canada. You don't have to have $1 million, but you have to have a certain number of what we call settlement funds to come to Canada. And I would always, for something like this, if you want direct permanent residence and you want to take your shot at it, there's a program available through immigration called Express Entry. And this is something that's pretty recent, I want to say the last 3-4 years. And it's replaced a lot of programs within immigration law that people apply for. So Express Entry is a points-based immigration program where essentially you upload your profile and you fill out all your information in terms of your career, your school, your knowledge of English, French if you know it, how much money you have, etc., your job history, and then you're awarded points for so much. If you have a spouse as well, or if you have children, you're awarded points for that as well. If you have family in Canada, you get points for that as well. And what immigration is doing is they are basically pulling candidates with a certain number of points. So if you have, for example, 480 points, I would say that that's a pretty good score. And there's a good chance that you would be in one of those, what we call round of invitations, that you would be selected for. When you are selected, you are eligible to apply for permanent residence. So it doesn't guarantee you permanent residence, but you are eligible to apply for permanent residence. With this particular youth, the fact that he or she studied in Canada definitely could give them some extra points depending on the level that they got to, because it helps if you have any kind of connection to Canada, whether that's work experience or school, or a family member, or even kind of any type of history. But those are the main ones that Canada definitely looks for, because then you're a candidate that they know would be easier to settle in, as opposed to someone who's never been to Canada before, has no connection, probably can't speak the language. It would be harder for them. It's not impossible, but it would be harder for them. So that's Express Entry if you want a clear path to PR. With this particular youth, because they can't afford a student visa, that also puts my mind to maybe if they can't afford a student visa, they probably can't afford permanent residence either. So that's definitely something to consider. And there are other temporary options that could be available to this particular person. And maybe that is coming on a work visa or something like that. But there are different requirements. And before kind of getting too much into an immigration class, I'll leave it there. And I will say, talk to an immigration lawyer, because there are options. We just have to figure out which option is best for you.
Thank you, Anissa, for the very detailed answer. I appreciate that.
My pleasure.
So that actually concludes all our questions. So I'd like to thank you both for your time in spending this time with us and answering all our youth questions. I'd like to thank all the youth who submitted their questions to us for taking the time to do that. And yes, thank you so much for sharing your personal experiences. And I think we got a whole bunch of great information for the youth, and I hope that it answered their questions. I also do think that for youth who are interested in the law field and who may not necessarily want to be lawyers, I think there are other options as well that they could look into. Like, I can speak for my personal experience. I was one of those youth that was interested in law. I did want to become a lawyer at one point, but I didn't end up doing that. I actually ended up going to school to be a law clerk. I did work as a legal assistant for quite some time, specifically with immigration, where I met Anissa, actually. And I actually love immigration law. It's one of my, I would say I'm very passionate about it. I also went to school for paralegal, which is another option as well. These are all different career paths that you can take on as well if maybe becoming a lawyer is not something that you want to do. But if you still want to work in law, there's so many other things you can do. You can become a court clerk. There's lots of positions within the court systems that you can do as well. So keep your options open. And I think, as Tushar and Anissa mentioned, there's so many things you can do with a law degree, so many things you can do within the legal profession. Anything you guys wanted to add?
Yeah, I think what I really love kind of seeing the encouragement and the inquisitive questions that all the youth have. I do wish that it was something I actually engaged in when I was in high school, to be honest. I feel like I went in a lot blinder than I was, and I want to really kind of put in that even when I was in law school, when I was doing my undergrad, even when I was in law school, I always kind of backtracked a little bit. And I wavered with, do I really want to do this? Is this the life I want?
Mm-hmm.
Even before I got called to the bar, I thought, you know, when I saw the amount of work and the late hours and things like that, I thought, is this what I want to do? Is this what I want to do? And I think what I really want to stress is it's really important to ask your questions, talk to professionals. Tushar said it great earlier, get experience. Personally, when I graduated from law school, I wasn't really getting a paid position because everyone was like, oh, entry-level position, but show your experience. I was like, I don't have experience. So I ended up working for free for several months. And that kind of led me to the path I'm in now. And I don't regret that, even though it was financially very difficult for just my basic needs. But it eventually kind of led me to the path that I wanted to go to. So you have to make some sacrifices.
Yes.
But it's important to have a network. Yes, yeah. It's important to have a network that you can rely on. It's important to have good friends, support, and whether that's even having even just one mentor who can help kind of coach you sometimes and that you can rely on. And it's even, you don't need to know everything. You know, a lot of times lawyers are, or when you want to be a lawyer, you're comparing yourself to someone you see on TV. And I always thought lawyers were kind of in a box. You know, they don't have time for small talk. They're not nice people. They're just out there to, you know, kind of work, you know, make big bucks, do the work, negotiate, you know, be really cutthroat. But I actually came across some people who really opened my mind, and that, you know what, we can laugh, we can take time out, we can actually admit that we don't know. So it is definitely, there's a lot of beauty in the career that isn't shown a lot of the time. And I'm really glad that when I was in law school and my motivation was wavering, I'm really glad, obviously, that I didn't drop out or I didn't quit or anything like that. I'm glad I did kind of go into it, blindly or not, because it was definitely a jump start. And I also knew that even though I wanted to experience law school and maybe see if I could be a lawyer, because like I said, there's no guarantees. I didn't know if I was going to make it or not to the Ontario bar. I thought, at least, you know, I have a law school degree, which could lead me in so many different paths. So if you want to kind of take a shot at it, but then know that you can, you know, still, you want to shoot for the moon, land amongst the stars, then why not? I would say power to you, and you'll never know. So then I would say go for it. If you're able to, then definitely go for it.
Thank you for your words of wisdom. I appreciate that. I think that also with what you said, making sacrifices, getting into volunteering with law firms, trying to get yourself out there, trying to build your experience. I think it's also important to remember, always create a network, and don't burn your bridges. I think that's very important because you never know. And I find that that's been my experience, and possibly with everyone here on this panel. I think that's been so helpful for me, and I think that's a piece of advice I would give to all the youth out there watching. If, in general, and it applies to any career, really, don't burn your bridges. You never know when someone you meet would be able to help you afterwards. You never know. They might be on the other side of an interview. They might be the one person who can give you that reference that you really need. You know, even for getting into law school, you do need some references, and that one person can really make a difference. So I think that's super important. And as Anissa and Tushar said, you know, be open. I know volunteering does take a toll financially because you are giving up your time, and but it's an exchange of experience, right? So just looking at it that way, and it's only short term until you can secure something more permanently. So yeah, thank you guys. Anything you'd like to add, Tushar?
Yeah, no, I think you guys said it well. And just to kind of conclude things off, you know, there's a reason why I agreed to do this call and this recording, because as I got older and, you know, began my career, I think I learned of how important calls like this and, you know, the networking and the mentoring and the meeting new people, how important it actually is. Because when I was younger in undergrad and stuff, I wasn't one of those guys that necessarily did that. But had I feel like I would have been in so much of a better position to know exactly which route I wanted to go. You know, so for the people watching, you know, the small things of planting those seeds now,
Mhm.
you know, shadowing the prospective careers that you might want to pursue, meeting the right people, talking to the right people, asking about their experience, like that. You can't put a dollar amount to that, because that will
Yeah.
save you years of thinking about what do I want to do, you know.
Yeah.
And it's those small things that have huge return on investment, you know. And so I really, really, really encourage everybody, you know, watch videos like this, reach out to people, reach out to Anissa and I'm sure Maria and Divika might provide a way of how we can continue this going forward.
I would love
But
that. Thank you.
yeah, it really has great value, and it'll really help shape the direction you want to go. So, and again, thank you, Maria and Divika, for having us, and it was great.
Thank you so much for your time. So I think we'll close off right now. Thank you very much for your time, for your efforts, and for those detailed answers that you shared with our youth. And thank you again to all the youth who shared all their questions with us. Take
No
care.
problem. Thank you, guys.
Thank you guys. Bye.
Bye, everybody.